In this video, I will be talking about the government shutdown, what you can do about it, how it's going to impact your business, and how you can minimize your risk. So what is a government shutdown? How will it impact your business? And what you can do to minimize your risk. That's what we're going to be talking about this video here. So I appreciate you joining me. And we're going to be talking about the government shutdown and how it's going to impact you, especially if you are a government contractor, or mainly this video is addressing you as a government contractor. Now, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare a nice PowerPoint presentation, but I did want to go through all my notes that I wanted to talk about. So let's go ahead and dive in. So what is a government shutdown? Well, Congress meets each year to pass a fiscal year budget. Now, the federal government's fiscal year starts from October 1st and it ends November 30th. And by November 30th, if they don't have an agreed upon budget, then generally they will pass a continual resolution to keep the government going until there is an agreement on the budget. In some situation, the continued resolution might be for a month, 2 months, or so forth, but there is a time frame to the continued resolution. Now, when a continued resolution ends and they still don't have an agreement, most of the time Congress will pass another or issue another continued resolution to extend it, and it keeps on going until then the budget is agreed upon. But in the event that the continued resolution ends and there is no budget in place, then a government shutdown will happen. Or if there is conflict in politics with different opinions and different views, and presidents and Congress can't come to agreement, then it can potentially cause a government shutdown as well. But usually it's centered around a budget. So what things are not impacted by a government shutdown? Let's address that there. Unemployment checks are not impacted by a government shutdown. Social Security is not impacted by government shutdown. Medicare reimbursements, farm subsidies, veteran benefits, interest payments on the national debt, are creditors to the United States. They keep on getting their payment, so that's not impacted. So who are required to report to duty? There are essential personnel and non-essential personnel. And essential personnel are required to report to duty, but they won't know when they're going to receive the paycheck. They do get paid to report to duty. They just don't know when they're going to receive their paycheck. Now, individuals that are part of the active duty for the military, they report to duty. Aircraft controllers or federal law enforcement agents like border patrols and so forth, they do report to duty. And then who are not required to report to duty, what they call not expected or non-essential personnel. So non-essential personnel are furloughed and they will not be paid. So while they are, they're not required to show to work and they are not paid. Individuals like the national parks, people that work for national parks, the National Zoo, the Smithsonian Museum, diplomats with the Department of State or IRS workers do not show up for work. Now, there is with every single agency, National Park, Zoo, Smithsonian, and there are some essential personnel that do show up for work, but the bulk of them do not show up for work. So how are government contractors impacted by government shutdown? Well, based upon what the Washington Post reports, that nearly 10,000 contracting companies were impacted by the government shutdown. And it's putting about $200 million at risk every single week, meaning that these 10,000 contracting companies are not going to get paid, and they will, about $200 million of that is not being issued out to these nearly 10,000 contracting companies. So what does that mean for you if you are a business trying to get into the government market? Well, if you're not in the government market, you don't have a contract already, it doesn't impact you much. Very little, if any. But it will delay because you're actively trying to win contracts, government contracts. So it may delay the RFP, RFQs that's being issued out. And it may delay you getting a chance to meet with the potential contracting officers, the agency buyers, the small business liaison officer, the small business specialist. So it may delay in some of your, potential meetings and delay your marketing and your capture plans. So it may do some of that and a few other things. But, if you haven't won a contract, you're not a contract holder, it won't impact you much at all. What does it mean for you if you are an active government contractor? So what does the government shutdown have to do? Because if you are an active government contractor, well, you may receive a stop work order. And if you receive a stop work order, then it impacts you if you receive that there. If you did not receive a stop work order, then you just keep on doing work as if it's normal. Only if you receive a stop work order from the government or from the contracting officer. So what is a stop work order? So let's look at the regulations and let's address it from that perspective. And I'm going to read through some parts of this here. So under FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, Part 52.242-15. This addresses the stop work order. Usually a stop work order is issued for a 90-day period unless they stated that it can be less than that or longer than that. But generally it's a 90-day stop work order. And it was, the regulation was initially passed in August of 1989. And it's issued by the contracting officer. And the contracting officer may at any time, by written order of the contractor, require the contractor to stop all work or any part of the work called for by this contract for a period of 90 days after the order is delivered to the contractor and for any other period for which the parties may agree. So it may be agreed upon for maybe 45 days. It may be agreed upon for more than 90 days. But if it's more than 90 days, there's some type of agreement that you will engage with the contracting officer. So upon receipt of the order, the contractor shall immediately comply with its terms and take reasonable steps to minimize the incurrence of costs allocable to the work. So they want you to stop immediately, and they want you to not cost the government any more money by continuing to do the work. And here's what happens next. Within the period of 90 days after a stop work order is delivered to the contractor, or within any extension of that period to which the parties shall have agreed, the contracting officer shall either, so these are the options, 1, cancel the stop work order. So if you receive a stop work order and 3 weeks later, or 2 weeks later, or 3 months later, they can cancel the stop work order, and if they do that, you can continue to go back to work. Or they can terminate the work covered by the order as provided in the default. Now, termination for convenience, this is an important terminology you need to understand as a business, a contractor in the government space. The government can terminate your contract for convenience at any time they choose to. Even if there's not a government shutdown, even if there is funding for it, if they choose to, if they decide to discontinue a program, to discontinue a project, or there may be a different perspective, a shift in politics, a shift in political views, then they can terminate the contract with you as a business owner for convenience. You as a business owner cannot terminate a contract. You are completely obligated to fulfill the contract, but the government can terminate for convenience. So keep that in mind. Point 2, if a stop work order issued under this clause is canceled, or the period of the order or any extension thereof expires, the contractor shall resume work. So if it's canceled, or they can call you to go back to work. Now here's the important part for you. The contracting officer shall make equitable adjustment in the delivery schedule or contract price or both. This is very important. They can make equitable adjustment in the schedule delivery time, in the price, and in the work itself. You can kind of modify all that. Everything can be modified, but it has to be done in writing. So keep that in mind as well. Don't do it if it's not in writing. If the stop work results in an increase in time, usually if the project, you're working on a 6 month project with the government, and there's a stop work order for 3 months, well, obviously it's going to change the time. And so that's all part of where you have to renegotiate. All right, so let's move on. If a stop work order is not canceled and the work covered by the order is terminated for convenience, the contracting officer shall allow reasonable costs resulting from the stop work order in arriving at the termination settlement. So once your contract is terminated and they decide that they will not continue with the project, then you have some recourse to discuss what's reasonable cost as a result of you, because maybe you hired 50 employees to work on a project. Maybe you rented dredging equipment or certain type of manufacturing equipment, or you invested in something. You may not be able to recoup all your costs because that's costs that you made on your end to fulfill the contract, but there are some reasonable costs that you can negotiate with the contracting officer. If a stop work order is not canceled and the work covered by the order is terminated for default, the contract officer shall allow by equitable adjustment or otherwise reasonable costs resulting from the stop work order. So if there's a stop work order and then you default on the contract. For example, you had to let go. Let's assume that the stop work order was for 90 days and you can't keep a staff for 90 days without paying them. Well, by the time by the government wants to recommence the project, you've laid off all your people. In that situation, you have terminated by default the contract. And you may not be able to go and rehire people, and they moved on and so forth. So in that situation, there may be a termination on your end by default. And there may be some adjustment in that situation as well. So that's the end of the clause under the FAR. So let's talk about what all that means to you. So how are you impacted and what you should do? So when you receive a stop work order, it means exactly that. You must stop the work and stop incurring costs to the government immediately. Or if there is a date that says you stop on Friday and today is Monday, then you abide by that. But usually you receive it and you're supposed to stop based upon that if there's not a date down the road. If your company receives a stop work order from the contracting officer, make sure you get a little clarification. But upon clarification, make sure you comply by it. But very important here, very important. Notify any of your suppliers, notify your subcontractors that you have received a stop work order so that they're not expecting to show up to do work. Because if they show up to do work, you may get into a legal issue where you have to pay them for work because you didn't notify them. If a supplier shipped you equipment and you took possession of it, but the government hasn't paid you, well, in that situation, you have to negotiate with the supplier, but you need to immediately notify them to protect you and to protect them. The government makes no guarantee that it will take any further deliveries from you, regardless of the type of contract, whether it's a service contract or whether it is a product that you're delivering. If they send you a stop work order, you just have to stop completely. Now, the government makes no guarantee of payment after the work if you continue to work. So if they've issued you a stop work order, but you continue to do work, they're not going to pay you for it. So if you receive it, don't show up for work. Now, if you have received progress payment for work or for the products, then you have to complete that portion of it, partly because the government have ownership rights to it because they've already paid for it. So comply by that there. Now, if you're in the middle of the work, which is work in progress, then determine a stopping point with the contracting officers. Like, for example, you started pouring concrete on a foundation. Well, you've ordered the concrete, you've dug the ground. In those type of situation, you need to talk to the contracting officer, because you probably you have to pour the cement because it's already been mixed. You've already dug the ground, and so there may be some things where you can discuss with the contracting officer to determine in that situation, and make sure you get it in writing, because if you're doing work after the stop work order, you got to get it in writing so that you can get paid. If the government has not paid you for items for that they've ordered or work that they've done, then in this situation, you have the rights to go and take your staff and work on other projects. You have the right to take the product that you already ordered, but they just haven't paid you for, and they haven't taken possession of it. You have the right to go and sell it to somebody else, because they don't have any claims to it. And when things recommence, then you can provide them a new quote, and because prices may have changed, you may have to hire more people. The staff that you've had have already been let go, and so you can renegotiate that. All right, let's talk about manage your risk and treat the stop work order as if you will not continue again forever on that project, and that you may never ever hear again from the contracting officer. When you receive the stop work order, do exactly what it says. Stop the work. Minimize your risk. Now, if and when the contracting officer has funding to restart the work, you can submit a proposal and renegotiate the scope of work and the amount of delivery time and delivery date. You can renegotiate the amount, the dollar amount that's within the clause. So the FAR allows you to negotiate pricing and delivery under equitable adjustment within the spirit of the original contract. So there you have it, a quick overview of the government shutdown and potential risk to you and what you can do to mitigate some of those risks there. So, in summary, do not start work until you have a signed agreement. Stop all the work that you've been asked to do, and when you've been asked to start work, don't start the work until you've got a signed agreement. So that is our summary. Now, I do have a quick disclaimer to share with all of you who's listened to this point here. GCA and its representatives, myself, we are not attorneys. We're not a law firm. We don't, it's not our legal interpretation. It's not our opinion about what the FAR means or anything like that. We're not giving you legal advice. So everything that's been discussed in this last few minutes is for educational purposes. You are obligated to hire an attorney if you need legal help. You're obligated, to yourself to do additional research. But all this was meant to kind of get you started in the right direction. Hey, thank you for watching this video on the government shutdown, what it is and how it can impact your business and what you can do to minimize risk. Now, we have a lot of other training videos. We have a lot of different events that we have going on. Check into the description below and look at some of our training programs that we do have available to help you, the contracting community. And also, if you like the videos that we're doing, hit the subscribe button and click on the bell so you can never miss another video that we put out. At the same time, hit the like button, and I will see you on the next training session. Take care.